Welcome back to my channel. This channel is for foreign mothers living in Germany, just like me. And on today's video, we have a very, very special guest, Karina Langarrigue. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing your name well. She is a clinical psychologist specialized in expat couples, cross-cultural couples, and also sex therapy. And she's also an expat since she was just 3 weeks old. And she was living in countries like Canary Islands, Spain, France, Belgium, and even my home country, Portugal. So I'm very excited to have you here. Also, Karina is doing a PhD. She's a PhD candidate, and her topic is related to expatriate motherhood. So perfect for us all. And let's start.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. There's something you want to add to your presentation?
Well, probably something that it's important to me as a psychologist and as a psychologist that is studying personality trait. I am what we also call as an adult TCK. So I'm an adult third culture kid, which is something that regarding this investigation and everything that we talk about is important, I think, to take into account, especially for moms raising kids abroad, to acknowledge that this third culture is something that many of their children will develop as they will be living in different countries from their parents' passport, and they will develop a different way of understanding the world. They are not wired the same way as a monocultural child. And I think it's important to acknowledge how that will influence in their behavior, in their temperament, and the way they see the life in general.
Yeah, very interesting. And you lived in so many places. We all have reasons why we move abroad. Can you tell us a little bit why you lived in all these places?
My mom is French and my dad is Spanish. So I was already in a cross-cultural family. And so I was born in the south of Spain. That's where my dad is from. Then we moved to the Canary Islands due to the climate and all the lifestyles is a little bit like calmer for everything. So many people choose kind to move down to the Canary Islands for those reasons. But then at some point for my mom, when my second sister was born, she found that it was easier to have the support of the family. She experienced one of those challenges of expat motherhood. And we didn't even have my dad's support there because in the Canary Islands was neither one or the other land. It was a neutral land where my grandparents were not there. So we moved to France to be by this on the side of my mom's mother. So I was there for a year, and then my mom was already much more of an expat than a French. She felt herself much more comfortable in my dad's country. So we moved back to Spain. This didn't work out. So we ended up in Portugal for a year. And then again, that feeling of rush that is much more present in the big land and on islands in general was coming to them again. And they said, you know what, let's go back to the Canaries. That's where my dad bought land. So we were traveling around the islands quite a bit for my mom's job, but we were set in the Canaries for many years. And then I moved to Barcelona for my studies. I met my husband. He got a place in Vulnerabravery in Belgium. And that's how we ended up in Belgium. And it was a time where I was also like kind of in a rush to become a young mom, because for nowadays generation, I'm considered a very young mom, only being 34 and already with a 7 years old. It's like, oh, normally moms start to be moms like around 30. And I had that urgency. I want to be an early mom. So we decided, let's just do all at the same time. Let's move to a new country, have a baby, you do your MBA, let's do this. Because nobody told me about the challenges of being a mom, everybody just speak about that wonderful creature you're going to have in your arms and you're going to love forever. That's how far we're taught about motherhood, right?
Yeah,
and this is not it. So we moved to Belgium. I was in the Flemish part. So I thought I was even going to be at ease because I speak French, because my mom is French. So I was like, you know what? Belgium is bilingual, isn't it? No, it's not. No, it's not. I discovered Belgians are not very bilingual. They might be with English. I must say the Flemish do speak pretty good English, not the French part necessarily. So I was in the Flemish part. Lucky enough, I spoke English, but still there were all these medical issues that were regarding motherhood that I had no clue, not even in English. So I had a very, very lonely pregnancy in the Flemish part of Belgium. My husband was a full-time MBA student, and so he was traveling a lot. He was a lot in school. So yeah, I had, lucky enough, Game of Thrones coming out at that time. So I had a Game of Thrones pregnancy. When he was done with his master's, I said, you know what, let's move to Brussels. At least it's going to be more international. I'll have contact with French-speaking mothers and can create that community, because I was honestly feeling really lonely and a little bit lost in like, how do you parent a baby? It's like, I don't know anything about babies. Although I love children, it's still my baby, is another feeling completely. So we moved to Brussels. I created my community. I got back to work because we found a beautiful creche that took my child almost at the age of 2. So I was a home mom for 2 years. And I started working a little bit later, like around 6 months later, I started working. I was pregnant with my second one. Everything was fantastic. I was only working part-time. I had everything set, my little cocoon ready for my eldest to have crash, my youngest to have cares at home. Everything was set. And then my husband was transferred to Ireland. And I was like, okay, now everything is set, everything is working. Now I know how motherhood works. I have already a 2 years old. So you get over all this very harsh transition of what it is to be a mother. What kind of mother am I going to be? What kind of baby is my baby too? It's like they're not only one baby. They're the babies that sleep well, the babies that not sleep well, the babies that eat well, the babies that not eat well, babies that love people, babies that hate people, people that love going to the playground, children that love staying at home. So I knew my son. I had everything prepared for to give a birth in a hospital where I will speak the language, so I could understand the doctors, and everything was set. And we got that notice when I was 6 months pregnant with my second one. So I was already by the end of my second trimester. So it was like, no, I can't move to Ireland now. And when my husband communicated that to the company that he was going to work for, the company said, well, we have hospitals here too. What's the problem?
Oh, good. Yeah.
I was like, what's the problem? Yeah, good. You have a hospital, but I don't know your doctors.
Roger.
I don't know the place where I'm going to live. I don't have my cocoon ready there. Yeah, well, they still didn't see the problem. So at that point, to me, it was kind of a big trigger because I'm a couple therapist. I could see a lot of these problems already happening in my consultations, where there was that feeling that the trailing spouse that was following the husband throughout the world was experiencing that feeling of the invisible expat. That feeling that they're not seen, that they're just that. Oh, come on. You're pregnant. What's that the problem? You just need a place to get the baby out, right? And that's it. That's how far kind of expatriated motherhood goes, is that you're just giving birth in a different country. What's the matter? And so I started looking at my own experience and starting to see what were the problems in consultations. And I thought, you know what? We need to see what is going on. Like, what is this connection of you just not be taken into account when you transfer to another country with the real difficulties that they experience while being there? That is what brings them to my consultation, right? They go to me because they were feeling that the bond was breaking, that they had a lot of resentment in the relationship, that she was feeling lonely or he was feeling lonely. There is still approximately a 25% of trailing spouses that are male, but it's still a very low percentage. But the feeling is the same. They have that feeling of not being understood or not feeling kind of taken into account in all these transitions. It's like you just follow as a suitcase would follow. And that's not it. So that's when I started with my research, and it was accentuated with my personal experience of being that trailing spouse, that in the end we traveled when I was 15 days after my postpartum. So it was with a very young baby, Ireland for a year, and then Spain a year after that. Came to Spain with not yet 4 years old and a 13 months old that have both lived in 3 different countries.
Yeah. That's overwhelming.
It is.
Yeah. And you answered also a lot about my next question. It would be like, if these adaptations to a new country were like an excitement, maybe when you were a child, I don't know, or like a really bad nightmare to get to adapt again. Would be nice to know your perspective also as a third culture kid, and also as a mother.
So funny enough, when you read about third culture kids, that's why I very much kind of recommend your audience to go and search for the third culture kids. There are many, many books nowadays. There is that beautiful woman called Lauren Wells that is creating amazing literature for third culture kids and for parents, and even for adult third culture kids. I have one of her books here that I highly recommend that is about, I don't know if the light is going to allow you to see it properly, but it's Unstacking Your Grief Tower. And this is for adults. It's for adult third culture kids that have built that tower of resentment, which is what you are asking me about. How is the outcome of a third culture kid life? Well, it very much depends on how you transit those moves. So something that we know, people that are acknowledged in how this wiring is done, is that if during the first years of development that go more or less until the beginning of teenagerhood, right? But it is true that the 7 first years are the ones where we are much more bound to our family, and we don't need our friends so much. It's only once children start primary school, more or less, that they start saying, you know what, I'd rather with my friends this weekend than with you and dad. But as from the age, I mean, before this age, children are super happy just to spend weekend with mom and dad. That's all they need. As long as mom and dad are there, life is great. So if mom and dad are there, and I'm going to highlight how it is being there fully present, not on a phone, on an online meeting, or trying to grieve their losses of the home they just moved from. If they are there, the kids are okay at a very young age, and transitions are not a burden. It's not something that they will suffer from,
Okay.
because they have everything they need. They have what is going to give them that security. The world can change, but as long as these family doesn't change, and I have my references around me, that is something Lauren Wells talks very well about on her books. If you kind of help those transitions to go smoothly by giving your child the time to prepare for the move. So don't go and tell your child, we're moving tomorrow, because this is not going to have a good effect in your child. But if you give them the time to acknowledge when things are settled, so don't get your child either in all this decision process of, we don't know yet where we're going, but we know we're going to go somewhere, and we don't know when, but we know somewhere in the end of the year. No, because the child does not understand at that age what times represents. So it is important that once you know how things are going to go, try to help your child to go through all these griefs that they are going to have to go, and to have a say in them. So for instance, if your child is a very great, for instance, I'm thinking about the sea, because I live by the sea now, so he loves going to that beach, and there is a very specific part of the beach that he loves going to throw stones in the water. So tell your child that there is going to be a moment where we won't be able to go to that beach anymore. We can come back in the future. Like, these places in the world is not a place that is going to disappear, but we're not going to be able to do that for a while we are, for instance, I don't know, in Switzerland, because we won't have the beach. So not even something close is going to be very different. So give that child the chance to grieve and to have that ritual of transition, to go and have a rite of going to that beach for the last time, taking those stones, having a little say, a little song, something that will help him to say goodbye to that moment. So we don't acknowledge how much grief comes together with transitions. But this is exactly what Lauren Wells highlights, that grief tower that TCKs will have unless we help them to process them. And to not give for granted that this beach is not something as important as his best friend living next door. Because maybe that beach had an impact emotionally for him or for her that is heavy enough to create a stock on that tower. So acknowledging that every child is another person that might need their own rites of transitions and that will experience griefs, it's something that will help transition a great deal. Having all these environment security items that they can relate to, whatever they are. For instance, if you are going to travel for a week because you're going to the other side of the world, and you're going to have to wait for your furniture to come with the containers, and you're going to have a provisional house for a month maybe, and you're going to have all the jet lag, so you're going to have to confront all these changes in your routine. Try to keep three things exactly the same way. If we read books before going to sleep, it doesn't matter whether you're on a boat, on a plane, in a provisional house, or in a hotel. You're going to read a book before going to sleep. And you're going to take those books that your child knows and makes them feel at home. You're not going to take a new book from the airport. You're going to try to make it as homey as possible, whatever you are. Try to keep three things: the nap, I don't know, which kind, whatever kind of little I don't know, coat they wear when they are cold, having the little doo-doo, so the little security item that they need to sleep. I don't know if they are used to eat with a specific spoon because maybe they're sensitive to the texture of the plastic. So have that little teaspoon in your bag, and this is the spoon they're going to eat at the airport, on the plane, anywhere they're going to be, so that they know I'm having lunch and there's still some things that are the same as at home. And that will help their anxiety to go down. So helping transitions is something that is going to make the experience much better. And then, as I said, keeping that nuclear family emotional support the same, there, present 100%, is also going to make the experience very different. So I had that. Lucky enough, I had my dad will go, but my mom was there every single day. That's why I highlight the importance on moms, because we don't acknowledge that, but we are many times the anchor to the stability of our children and of our partners as much, because they also come back home and we are there. And we have prepared that meal that they miss from the home. And we have prepared their bed with everything. We have organized their clothes. So we are the anchor emotionally, like creating that safe space wherever in the world we are. So how important it is that we are feeling well.
Yeah, exactly. See, this is such good advice. We are told to prepare our children to stop using the pacifier, or to kind of train or talk to them about stop using nappies. But with moving to another country, there's not so much information out there that everybody knows and everybody talks about. So this was really, really good advice. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure to actually just contribute the same way like all the people working around TCKs is to prevent, because money and time invested in prevention is money and time saved in intervention. And we continue talking a lot about the challenges, about the difficulties, about the negative outcome of this expat life. But we don't talk about the preventive tools, all these possible actions that we can do in order to prevent all these outcomes to happen.
Exactly.
And to actually have that beautiful outcome that I have. I love traveling. I don't experience traveling as traumatic at all. I love that to a certain extent. I was moved again when I was 16. So that's where it comes to developmental stages. When I moved throughout all my young childhood, that was fine. I don't have blocks on that tower because I was fine. My mom was there. She was helping us even if I didn't want to go to school for a while, because I was still transitioning toward the adaptation to the new home, the new country, etc. She was fine to have me at home as long as I needed. She would always be on my side and not on the system side we were landing it. It was like whatever she needs goes first. So I was very lucky in that sense. But then I was moved again when I was 16. That was a decision that was made on me having a more challenging school, because they knew that I wanted to move back to Spain, so to the land in Spain from the Canaries. So they said, you know what, studies are going to be harder there, so it's better that you move to a school that is going to get you to the level you're going to be asked for university. And that was a very bad decision, because I was moved in a moment where my family is not anymore my reference. My friends are. I'm a teenager now, and they are my family. And they moved me away from that for good reasons. Don't get me wrong. Parents normally don't do things because we believe we're going to hurt our children. With my mom really thought she needs a higher degree in her bachelor in order to get in university. She really needs that. So it was a good decision in terms of my academia and my career. But it was very difficult emotionally to leave all my friends behind, to not be part of their daily activities anymore, and having to go through that grief when you're already grieving your own childhood and turning into that teenager adult mixture that is trying to develop there. It was very hard. So what I always recommend is that parents try to move during the early years of development of their children, but always taking into account what I just said, that they are going to have to be very present if they really want these to work out. And that if they can avoid to move them during their teenagerhood, I always say, you know what, life doesn't end when your child turns 18. On the contrary, that's why life starts again. You can continue moving after that. Like, your child will know where he or she wants to be. You can just accompany them to be whatever they need to be. But they need you to be present and to understand what they are going through as much as during childhood. And we forget that very often. We believe they are teenagers, now they figure it out. And some parents, even in order not to kind of break that routine and not take them with them to another country, they'll just send them to a boarding school. But this is not the solution, because teenagers need their parents as much as young children. What they need as much is their friendships, but they need you as much.
Yeah, so they need both.
They need both.
Yeah.
That's why it becomes more complex to travel with them, because unless you take all the bunch of friends with you, you are still making them a great pain there to transit.
So you would say until children are, I don't know,
Around 12, I would say between 10 and 12, start thinking where you want to settle for their high school. And once they're going to move to university, maybe because of that TCK personality, they might even ask themselves to say, you know what, why don't we go back to Illinois, where we were living when I was 3, because I really like something about that and I want to go to a good university that is there. Maybe they're going to be the one expatriating themselves. But then is another stage. It's kind of when they reach to the 21, 25 is when they say that the prefrontal cortex is completely developed, is around 25. So when they reach to a certain point, it's like there are many tools that they have already developed. But it's not when they're 13, it's when they're 20s. And that what we see is that TCKs that have a very high grief tower, what happens is that this tower crumbles when they get around the 20 somethings, because they didn't have the tools to actually manage.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. And what about the moms? Because expat life, it's already challenging, or has already this known challenges. But which ones, from your experience, are the ones that we as mothers should be a little bit more alert and try to prevent some kind of, I don't know, or to a little bit to preserve our mental health? How to do it?
I would say, as you were saying, that we are very much aware of the challenges of expat life. I don't think we are aware of the challenges of expat motherhood as much, because there is still that belief, and I think this is generalized for motherhood all over the world, that we are meant to know how to do things. We were born for it.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah, but it's a little bit, our society separates a little bit, you know. This mother is having a baby, so she's in her love bubble. I love this this expression, don't get me wrong, but this is not a bubble. We need everybody. We need more than before. So don't leave us alone inside the bubble, please.
Absolutely. That's it. I wouldn't have put it better. There is that belief that we know how to do it and we're going to deal with it. It doesn't matter where we are. It doesn't matter who we are with. We're going to manage, which is not true, because at what you said, we are in that little bubble, but that little bubble should be seen as, in that moment, we are much more delicate. So that's what I love about a word that is called matrescence. Is a word that was developed by an anthropologist. And what she studied is that transition toward motherhood as seen as the same process that happens in adolescence. Remember what I was highlighting before? The teenager needs you as much. Don't believe that because he's in these teenager years, he's not going to need you anymore. He's going to need some additional things. It's more complex than when we were children. We were enough. Adolescents, we also need that friendships. Now, matrescence, that transition toward motherhood, also requires something. And this is the community. We need a community. Having our partner is not enough. Having everything sorted out, like financially and in terms of material facilities, is not enough. We need a community. This is the additional need that we need when we go through matrescence. And this is not seen.
Yeah.
It's seen the way you were saying. We are in our bubble and we are good. Yeah. No, we are not good. And then starts all this very common feeling in mums, which is guilt. Guilt, inaccuracy, I'm not doing things well. I should. Very harsh on ourselves. I should know. I should do better. I should be able. And that transforms into a very heavy guilt that so many moms carry around. And that in expat motherhood, just to answer to your question, how is that specifically felt in expat moms? That guilt is double. Because whatever you do is either not accurate and right in your home country or in the country you are.
That's so true. Yeah.
So you're always going to have it wrong.
Yeah, you have to choose to do this way or this, or to choose your own way, you know.
Exactly. Well, that's what every mom should choose, their own way. But how difficult it is to follow your inner voice, to follow your instinct, to follow your intuition if you have never been taught to do so. How? How do you do that?
Yeah, especially as a mother.
When you have that responsibility put on your shoulders that your child's life depends on your decision. It's like, you know what? I'd rather share that responsibility and do like mom says or like the doctor says or like whoever says. Because if I am the only responsible for whatever comes out of that child, it's too heavy.
Yeah, exactly. And to prioritize what you do next, you know.
Exactly.
Never stopping.
So having that feeling that you are the one in charge of making your own decision, but you are entitled and you have the right to seek for help and advice as many times as you need is important. You're going to end up doing whatever you want. But don't get me wrong, you have the need to search for support. So something I like very much as a solution for those challenges is that you need to show yourself vulnerable and not seeing that vulnerability as something that makes you weak, that is going to kind of move you away from your intuition. But on the contrary, being vulnerable and showing yourself as a person that has needs, that needs answer, is actually brave. Is extremely brave, because it shows that you are daring to ask for help, and after having this advice, information, whatever you want to call it, you are going to make your decision, but based on information, based on something that supports you, which is the community.
Makes totally sense.
But in order to create that community, you need to show yourself vulnerable. You cannot go out there saying, I have no doubts, no questions. I know how I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. That's not the way.
We were taught our whole life to be tough, you know, and be independent. And it goes a little bit on the other direction. Not that we would not be independent if we show our vulnerabilities, but
exactly.
To
It's kind of turning that word of vulnerability. I love that new word, vulnerabravery.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah. I love it also. It makes totally sense, actually.
Absolutely. So I think this is like this duality between what is expected from home, what is expected in the country where we land at, and this mixture of what should I be doing? Should I be asking for advice? Should I be making my own way? Is one of the challenges. And another challenge is that, well, natural isolation, as you were describing, that motherhood is kind of a little bubble that you're in, because you are the one breastfeeding if you choose to do so, but you are also the one that is the main kind of reassuring image for that child. You are the person that smells like mom. You are the person. So there is a little bond that is isolating you from the rest of the world. But in expat motherhood is even bigger, because you are not even in already a safe place where people can reach out to you, can come and bring you food, can come and you have to make that additional effort to create that community if you don't want to be isolated in that bubble. So this loneliness is something that many expat moms experience, like much more than non-expat moms, but because they have that additional challenge that they have to start over, that community support, that network of moms. And sometimes if you have the barrier of the language, for instance, that's another great challenge for moms. It's difficult to find other people to talk to. Something I can see is that we tend to go toward our native country, and native country as an adult TCK is difficult to define, but you kind of try to look either for the culture that is closer to your mom, because many times that's where we got all this kind of nurturing of how to do things. So finding people that do things in similar ways to mom feels like home in a way. And then there is that other challenge for adult TCKs in specific. So the one that are monocultural is going to be quite common, that they're going to just go to the culture of their parents in general. Otherwise, mom will have always a little bit kind of a little bit more strength for the cross-cultural ones. But for the TCKs, the one that don't really kind of align with any culture, other TCKs are the ones that are going to become that kind of community, because we are wired in a similar way as much. So it's like, oh yeah, I know, what are you looking for? Yeah, my mom did that to me, but I actually don't feel like doing that anymore. And this helps to release that inner critics and inner guilt that not following your family steps, because there is that on you as well, like you're not following your family steps because you are not wired the same way, because you're already a third culture kid, maybe your parents were not. So you have to confront that feeling of what we call is breaking those invisible loyalties. The loyalties is being a good daughter to my mom and do what she expects me to do. I think it's important to kind of understand that motherhood is not just something that happens as we grow hair as a bald baby and then we grow hair. No, it is something deeper. It is a change of your identity. You're going to change your priorities in life. You're going to change your routines. Your body's going to change forever. Even though you go back to the beautiful shape you had, there are still things that are going to be different. And you might be the only one noticing it, but it is going to be there. So there is the same huge change that happens in adolescence. You're going to change. Even sometimes, this is something beautiful that is coming up in a book in Spanish that is written in Portugal, by the way. And this is something that it's very difficult too, is that since you're grieving that old you, not mom, even your relationship, even some friendship might change too. Because maybe some moms that you never thought you would get along with, all of a sudden have the same routines than you, the same priorities than you, and they become your friends. And then those wonderful friends that you used to go partying with, all of a sudden they don't understand why you're not joining them at 1 a.m. at the pub because you're breastfeeding. Oh, come on, can't just your husband give them a bottle? And they just don't get it because they're not in the same moment. It's a lot, and we're not taught about that. So I'm so glad that you are making the effort to just find people to talk about it, so that other moms can acknowledge, you know what, you're going to go through a lot more than a delivery that might be scary. Yeah, delivery is not the worst part. It just takes normally, let's put top 48 hours. That's it. That's it.
And
well, motherhood is not 48 hours.
We had the whole pregnancy just worried about delivering. And afterwards it's a whole world.
It's a new world. Exactly. It is indeed.
And can you tell us just a little bit about your research as a PhD candidate? Because since it's related to us, mothers in a foreign country, maybe could be that in some time we will have more answers about us, and we could, I don't know, have some more tools specific for our adaptation to this new life as a mother.
Exactly. That's exactly my point. What I try to do is try to see something more specific. Unfortunately, I am not allowed to do a PhD, postdoc, etc. in one program. Like my directors are very much like kind of strict in that point. Like I need to narrow it down. So what I'm trying to see is precisely what you just said. What are those preventive factors that will help mothers to actually thrive in their process of transitioning toward motherhood in an expat context, and what is going to actually help them to become a mother and also adapt to the country? Because something that we know that is, has already been researched is that around 50% of expatriated projects, so is a very high number, they fail due to the lack of adaptation of the spouses. So my research is about highlighting this figure in all these international projects, trying to see how they have adapted to both processes depending on their personalities as well, to see whether there are some protective factors depending on your personality at first, or whether there are more like environmental conditions that will help you not to get overwhelmed. Because the trait of personality I am kind of concentrating my study is sensory processing sensitivity, which is a sensitivity to the environment. So it is a sensitivity of your nervous system to catch on all these external stimuli and internal stimuli that are happening throughout life, so in different moments. So if we put motherhood as a very intense internal stimulating moment with all the hormones going on, the body changes, all this attachment to your baby going on, the breastfeeding, the lack of sleep, this is a lot of internal stimuli happening during motherhood. Yeah. And we add that process into a context that is externally very stimulating. Airports, airplanes, new homes, new smells, new tastes, new people, new language. I am assuming this is a great cocktail of stimuli that, depending on how you're wired, you might get more overwhelmed than a non-highly sensitive mom. But this is just a hypothesis I'm testing. And the outcome, I am pretty sure it will depend on some protective variable. So what do they do not to get overwhelmed? And this is what I'm looking for. So I am just collecting experiences of mom all over the world that are expatriated right now with children and that are willing to just share with me their experiences on both sides, like how much it was difficult for them to adapt to being a mother in an expatriated context, but also what did they do to actually succeed in those adaptation processes, to actually share with the world those like basic needs for expat mothers to succeed.
Okay, thank you for doing this research.
Thank you.
And you're still looking for participants, or?
Yes, I am.
We will leave the link to participate in our research here on the description of this video. And we can also find you on social media.
Yes, you can. I am not very active on like all these social media that are not so much as LinkedIn. I'm much more on LinkedIn because I am, as a researcher and a clinical psychologist, I like very much posting kind of very deep reflection, writing some articles and so on. I am, though, on Instagram, trying to share with the world as many information as I gather by contacting with professionals.
Thank you so much for being here. I've learned so much. I hope you all also. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you're new. And see you on the next video.
Thank you. Thank you, Marga.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.